All right, everyone, welcome back to another edition of Adam Interviews, where we pick out pretty interesting people to talk about interesting things in our community, the kind of stuff that you want to know about. And right now, a lot of you want to know about school. We are a few days in. We are in our first full week for most districts in our area. And there have been a lot of changes. Of course, the big one being the cell phone ban. We've got to talk about food and staffing and so much else. And to help me do that is Mike Pirro. He is the superintendent over in the Pittsford Central School District. Mike and I go way back.
We do.
25 years?
A long time.
No, 30. Yeah, 30 some odd years. So now, Mike, before we get into all the big stuff, you are on the cusp of retirement.
I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Start off health teacher, if I'm not mistaken.
Started out as a health teacher and then moved to assistant principal. And then principal at the Pittsford Middle School, then assistant superintendent for human resources, and then superintendent. So actually, it's interesting. My whole career, I've stayed in the same building. And
wow.
I've just kept moving rooms down the hall. So here I am.
I mean, that is somewhat rare. You usually see people who are assistant principals, they have to jump out of the district in order to become principals. So I feel you must feel pretty fortunate to be able to stay within the same district.
It's amazing. You make so many relationships along the way. You get to know the systems. You understand the culture. You get to become the person that is able to maximize the strengths, learn from the weaknesses, and keep growing from it year to year.
Yeah, no, that's remarkable. What made you decide before, again, I didn't plan to get into you right away, but, you know, to get out of the classroom to say, I'm going to get my administration degree and move outside the classroom? What inspired that?
Working with students in a whole different capacity was very fascinating to me, and seeing how you had the ability to impact students and the culture of students in a real positive way by working as an assistant principal or principal. I always appreciated and enjoyed working with students outside of the classroom. I always enjoyed working with parents and the teachers within the building, so this was a great opportunity.
All right, so I'm going to use your many years in the district to transition to cell phones. Obviously, when you got going, cell phones were not an issue. I mean, it was just a non-entity. How did the advent of cell phones change over the last 20 years? How did it change the interaction between teachers, students, and students?
I started in Pittsford in the early 90s. And if you think about that time, we had no cell phones. We had no internet. We had no emails. We had a chalkboard. And then the evolution of technology from then to here, it has been it's been an explosion and very fast-paced in a relatively short amount of time. And so I think that when I started, we would deal with incidents that happened in school often that were taken care of, and we're able to move forward the next day. The cell phones, the evolution of apps and cell phones and social media has really forced us to shift our involvement as administrators when incidents happen in school or outside of school, because they live forever. And students can see things online or see things on text or do things on text or online that that last quite a while. They can last weeks for students. And so we've had to change everything for how we treat students with cell phone infractions or social media infractions, working with students about the digital citizenship and how much of their legacy they're starting to build online and their footprint that they're building online, and trying to challenge students to do the right thing.
Yeah, I was talking with a Gen Zer yesterday, and she was saying, we were talking about how come that generation doesn't necessarily party as much anymore.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They don't drink as much as a whole and things like that, but they also don't go out and hit the dance floor like we did, according to the data that New York Times compiled. And she was saying, well, the surveillance. I think people are worried about being embarrassed, and it can get out online. And I had really never thought about that. Do you see a similar hesitancy to do certain things within the student body now because they worry it's going to be on the cell phone and therefore then on the internet?
I think that that's an area that's been learned over time. I think before, students thought that they could send anything and it would be out there and gone. And even if they did things on different apps where you can send it and it would disappear, it's still there. And I think after a decade of doing this and learning from different experiences and bringing in speakers and bringing it into curriculum, students are starting to understand that what they do is withstands the test of time, and so it's always out there. So I do believe they are more cautious because of that.
Yeah, and I could see positives and negatives to that too. They might not do things that they shouldn't. At the same time, they might not be as kooky as they might want to be.
We went to opening day. When we started our first day of school, I toured the buildings with our board leadership and spoke with the principals and obviously spoke with our students. And as we were walking around, it was a different environment. And honestly, it was a very much more positive environment from our perspectives. So we saw students sitting at the cafeteria tables talking to each other. We had half the amount of students in a study hall in the commons area compared to lunch, and that was louder than lunch period because students were communicating. And before, we would see students on their phones playing games or doing whatever they were doing online and not having the interpersonal relationship with others. And so this was really refreshing. It was great to see students talk about the Bills win in person versus texting, and I feel it's a real healthy change, and I think it's something that we're learning through.
Obviously, you probably had, and I've heard from students complaining about it. I do wonder if some were almost glad they wouldn't say it, but it's like, you had to take it away from me. I couldn't control it.
I have a student advisory committee that I meet with, and we started meeting last year around the cell phones, and that's exactly what many of them shared, is that the hard part is when you go home, every parent has different rules. You can sleep with your phone in your room. You have to keep your phone out in the hallway. You can turn your phone off at this time. You keep your phone on at all the time. What they liked was this was universal, that all students had to follow the same rule, and it allowed them a chance to breathe and just be students and not worry about what's online.
You know, and I'm not here advocating uniforms by any stretch, but to me, you know, there are negatives and positives to uniforms, but one of the positives is it puts everyone on an equal footing.
And that was something we talked about 20 years ago when I was a principal.
Interesting.
That same topic of, back then, it was the brand that students were wearing, how short were the shorts, how much people will compare one another with, but you know, based on their socioeconomic status, and how nice it would be to have an even playing field relative to apparel. Yeah. And so that conversation is certainly full circle.
Yeah, you never know. Pendulum swing.
You never know.
Yeah, pendulum swing. So it's interesting. So Pittsford kind of found a middle ground. Obviously, the Greece Central School District, and look, every district, they get, that's the beautiful thing about district, there's autonomy. They can see what's right for their community, for their own students, and they went full bore many years ago. And now they actually have screened, for those who don't know, that you actually walk in and you get screened, and they will put your phone in a yonder pouch and you won't have access to it. They suggest you leave it at home, but you cannot carry it around. Pittsford went a step back from that, and they said, listen, just drop it off in your lockers, don't touch it until the end of school. What made you decide to kind of take that, as opposed to fighting the measure or going full steam? You kind of found that middle ground. What inspired that?
I certainly had my preference, but the ultimate decision came from different focus groups that we had. So we had a student voice in my advisory committee. We had over 100 parents show up to what we call a power hour to give feedback around cell phone use and the bell-to-bell adherence and what that could look like. We took all of that feedback, worked with the principals and teacher leaders, and tried to find a good starting point. So our students were great because one of the options was, do we keep the cell phones in a backpack? That would be the least resistant, and just keep them out and keep them off, out of sight and off. Mm-hmm. And the students shared that having that phone so close would be too tempting, and people would be putting their hands in their pocket using it, and that wouldn't work. So we looked at that second level, which would be the lockers, which is interesting. Since you've been to school, probably students haven't used lockers. And so that became a whole different training for our students on the first day of how to use lockers, to use their combinations, make sure it's secured, put their phones in there. And we felt it was a good middle ground for our students. And then knowing that we may have to monitor and adjust along the way.
Yeah. So which one did you fall on? Were you more of put in the backpacks, or did you want like screening, don't even bring it?
I initially thought, let's just keep it in the backpacks.
Okay.
Let's give the students the benefit of the doubt. And if they, if it becomes an issue, then we go to the lockers. And it was actually the students that swayed my perspective.
Are you happy now that, I mean, it's only been a week, but do you think it's been the right call?
It's great. So there's pros and cons to every choice. That was the biggest choice of where to secure the cell phones. Pouches, we were concerned about the amount of time it would take to secure them. So we wanted to also be respectful of the learning environment and student stress with getting to school and getting their cell phones away, getting a first period class or to homeroom. And lockers ultimately felt like the best fit.
Yeah. And by the way, I should clarify, when I said that I've known Mike for 30 years, just to add context to that, my mom became assistant principal at Sutherland and then became principal, and Mike Pirro became principal and then ultimately became superintendent. But the administration in the Pittsford Central School District are super tight, and hangouts, and I was that awkward kid kind of on the side talking to adults. So, so there you go. So yeah, I saw a couple posts from teachers just truly inspired. Did you have teachers that were kind of like fed up with trying to just regulate cell phones in the classroom? Was that an issue?
Prior to the start of the governor's policy, our Board of Education and I met early in the fall. We had planned on doing something similar to bell before the governor made it law. So we had an ample time to meet, work with, again, focus groups, get people's feedback, listen to teachers. And that was a common concern, is that teachers felt caught in the middle. Some teachers allowed cell phones in the classroom, some didn't allow cell phones in the classroom. And they were forced with that dichotomy of how to deal with that. So this was a real good way to say phones are away. Everyone's being treated equally. Making sure that students and staff all knew what the rules were and families knew what the rules were. And knock on wood, so far, so good.
Yeah, no, hey, look, I was telling someone, I might have even said it on the podcast here, but in 2003, I was in Syracuse at the time reporting, and the hot button issue was smoking in restaurants and bars. And, you had 50% saying, it's freedom, you have to allow it. The other saying it's not healthy. And after it was passed, something happened which I had never experienced with an issue before, which is the opposition disappeared. Mm-hmm. Now we don't even talk about it. Right. There's no one lobbying to get smoking back into restaurants. Mm-hmm. And people now go out, and bars that were worried that they would close, they're doing better than ever because people will go out and they don't have to worry about smelling. I wonder if the cell phone bans, once they kind of take effect all over the country, or if they do, if people look back and be like, I can't believe we allowed kids to have cell phones in schools. Do you think that will be the perspective 10 years from now? My wife and I were just talking about that exact same analogy. In 2003, while we weren't smokers, it was just known that you were going to go out and you were going to smoke, and then you smelled like smoke the next day. Clothes that you wore smelled like smoke. You didn't really enjoy it, but the people that were around you that were smokers loved it. But people knew that something should probably change, and we love that change. And I think everyone got used to the change. And I think cell phones are very, very relatable to that. Sometimes students and families need help with saying, this isn't right. We'll be the bad guys, and we'll make sure it's done in a reasonable way, so students can be distraction-free and learn the things that we want them to learn, everything from social, emotional to academic and everything in between. I do feel that this has been a huge success across the county. I had an opportunity to talk with several of the superintendents last week, and I think everyone is feeling the same way, that this was a long time coming. It's working well. And students seem to feel like they can be their authentic selves, a little bit more relaxed. And I feel it's been a home run so far. That's great. Talking about food, tell me what the situation is with free lunches. And I think there was a discussion in the Pittsford Central School District about whether to adopt that program. Why don't we first go over what that means, the free lunch program? So at this point, another change that was in the governor's budget was the approval of universal free meals for all students K through 12.
So districts had options of going with breakfast and or lunch, different levels. So just elementary, just high school, just middle school, or a combination of all of them. And for Pittsford, this was a huge change because we were not part of the federal lunch program to begin with. So in other words, prior to this, we were one of the few outsiders in New York State where we had full control over our meals. After a lot of surveying of families, we realized that our families would also welcome the free lunches across the board. Then we had to look at our own capacity. Given it was so late in the school year especially, we had to apply to first be part of the program because we weren't in the federal program before, and then make a commitment to what we felt we could do in short order. So we made K through 5 our priority, and we're now doing free lunches and breakfast at the K-5 level. At one of our elementary schools, we have 5 elementary schools. We were shocked. We served over 200 breakfasts the second day of school. High glowing remarks from families and students. So we're working through the logistics there. We couldn't pull the trigger necessarily at the secondary level at this time because our capacity in ordering of different equipment that we would need for that type of volume. So our goal is to go K-12 the following school year.
What would be the reluctance to joining a system like this, if there was any?
I probably just the capacity. So it's increased staffing, and the staffing part is challenging, especially when you're trying to hire support staff. So cafeteria monitors, serving line people, the capacity of serving lines. Do you have to change the flow of the traffic in the cafeteria? Can you serve so many students in such a short amount of time? And then you have the actual physical equipment, the stoves, the venting, all those wonderful things, the refrigeration for that volume of foods.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of staffing, it wasn't all that long ago that, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, that especially 20 years ago, you had to fight to get a position. I mean, people had to sometimes take jobs outside of Monroe County and commute and then hopefully get a job in Monroe County. And we're talking mainly teachers, but it seems like things have changed. If you can kind of tell me how they've changed and why, that would be great.
You're 100% right. When I started, there were hundreds of applicants for one position. So you were very fortunate to get a teaching position. Today, and I'll just share, leading right up to school, we were scrambling to find science teachers. So we had a science teacher that had to leave for medical reasons, so it opened up a spot. And simply put, we really couldn't find one. We couldn't find a technology teacher that we needed to hire. We have special education teachers we still need to hire. We have support staff that we need to hire, bus drivers that we need to hire. And again, that's across the state. So I think a lot of things have led to that. I think part of it is the retirement system has changed significantly. So they've added different tiers to the retirement system. So teachers now have to teach to a later period before they can retire. They pay more into the system. I think a lot of people are looking at what they can make in the private sector versus the educational realm. And our job now is to work on something that we've really never had an issue with before, which is promotion of the occupation, promotion of working in Pittsford. We've really never had an issue with retention, but it's really now just getting people to apply and getting the right people in front of our students, and that pool is dwindling significantly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one has to wonder if there happens to be a recession or job loss, whether people then will turn back to a more secure position like this, look 180 days a year off.
Right.
Like, there are giant advantages, plus the reward of teaching students. So
I have 3 children, and 2 of my children are going into education. And I had to sit down with them and chat individually with them about what how much education has changed, and if this is something they really want to get into. So there is, while you're there 180 days, which is certainly a benefit, there's a lot more challenges today, I think, than in the past. So our teachers today are dealing with, ultimately, I think, larger class sizes, a much more wider array of needs within the classroom. The responsibilities are increasing. Every year, there's different mandates that directly impact the school, the classroom teacher. Everything from mandated training that we have to do today and they have to do today, to everything from professional development around workplace violence to how to work with gifted children in the same classroom as students with disabilities and everyone in between. And then you have the social media too, and a lot of the feedback that may come your way from the outside world. So it's a different occupation. It's a great occupation.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot right now with growing our own teachers. We've started clubs in both Sutherland and Mendon High School to tap students that we feel would be good teachers and invite them in and observe classes and learn about the profession. We're working a lot closer with universities and trying to form partnerships with student teaching and hiring in Pittsford, but we're all fighting for that same pool, which we don't want to do.
Yeah, but widen the pipeline and
That's right.
Strengthen the pipeline. I do wonder, though, so, I mean, just using my profession, where the changes come in almost any industry, and there's no question the regulations, the environment both have changed for teachers. If it would be easier for people coming in, because they don't know any different, versus those who have been there and they've grown up in one world and now they have to adapt to another.
That's correct. I think that's a really good point. We just had our full induction with new staff, and they are energetic. They're excited. They hit the ground running on day one, and it's great to have that new blood. But that perspective of having someone brand new to the profession versus someone that has been there for a little bit is interesting for sure.
Yeah, they might be like, "How are you excited about this?" I don't know. This is the way it goes. So, on the cusp of kind of venturing off into your next chapter, what kind of message would you give to administrators in particular who are new, who are coming into the profession?
We've done a lot of work lately around culture. Being able to set a culture in your district, in your building, where all students, all staff feel like this is a place that's welcoming, affirming. The people feel good about walking in your building. People feel like they're going to be supported. There's nothing better than to be able to say, you were part of creating this environment where everyone belongs. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is be willing and ready to adapt to change. And probably third, once you think you know it all, it's time to leave, because you never are going to know it all. You need to be open as a leader to being able to take in fresh, new perspectives, being able to adjust yourself, being able to project what's happening in the future, and be prepared. And it's necessary to be highly collaborative, more than ever.
Yeah. How people love to just say, "Oh, well, they're COVID kids. They're going to have this deficiency or this deficit," and I think about it. I'm like, yes, there's no question from March until the end of the school year in 2020, they didn't have school. But I think you guys got them right back into school in the fall. And yeah, they had masks and whatnot. And then the year after that, it was kind of back to normal. So how much I'm not trying to reveal my opinion on this, because I actually don't know, how much of an impact do you think the pandemic had on kids?
I think the biggest part with the pandemic was the social emotional part of it, being isolated. I would say reacclimating to being together was the biggest part of it. But I guess my perspective on the whole thing is it doesn't matter. Our job is to meet students where they are and to see what they need and then find the best way to provide that for them.
Yeah. And the pandemic also, especially for the medical field, I love that people are looking a bit closer at whether it's school districts, the medical field. I mean, this is how it should be, more engagement, but there is a line between questioning and cynicism. And, we've seen the school board meetings where it's gotten very volatile. What would be your message to parents at this time when a lot of them do have questions about books, about, classroom etiquette, things like that? What would, as far as like their approach and how they should view their own school district?
Boy, that's an amazing question. I think about that all the time. I'm willing to, and I think everyone in our district, in all districts, are willing to sit down with parents who have opposing views. One of our jobs, I feel, is to be able to model what it's like to have a conversation where there's two opposing views that meet, and be able to do that in a respectful, courteous way, You and I can disagree on something and not shout and yell or point our fingers or embarrass other people to try to win. I think that we need to do more of listening. I think we need to have more empathy. I think it's just a skill that our students need to see us practicing as adults. And I think sometimes as adults, we forget what our role is and that other people are watching us. And so my hope is that as we approach, and I think we've all gotten a little bit better with this, as we approach conversations that are difficult, that we're able to do so in a respectful manner. We've done a lot with families in our board meetings and other areas in our schools where we've changed our code of conduct for adult. We've changed how we've done public comments because we have to set parameters, at least to start, that would promote a respectful dialogue. So for parents that have opposing views with anything, I would just encourage them first to reach out and have civil discourse. And it may be uncomfortable, but it's a lot better than going off in a real negative way to embarrass, to humiliate, to scream, to yell, because we are all models for our kids.
No, and they can see it online.
They do, and they do.
And they do. Any last words, any last thoughts as we really venture into this next school year?
It's exciting. I'm really excited to see the long-term impact on not having phones in school. I'm fascinated to see how it plays out in our overall behaviors in schools. So what's it going to look like when we look at our discipline for bullying, for teasing, for harassing, for excluding other kids, for you name it. I'm really excited to see what that looks like. I'm excited to see how this connects with attendance and school phobia and whether or not it will indeed promote more interpersonal skills and connections. I have high hopes for it. The first few days have shown that there could be a light at the end of the tunnel sooner than we thought. I would also share that while we talk about education, there's a lot of negative things that we can say. There's no better profession in the world than to be able to live every day trying to make a difference in the lives of others. And so I would encourage anyone who's thinking about that as teaching as a profession to jump right in. There's nothing more rewarding.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just the teaching that makes the difference, it's role modeling as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Mike Pirro, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate the time. And I'm sure that you got an issue at some school that needs your attention. So with that, I'm going to let you go.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you once again for watching. Great conversation with Michael Pirro, the superintendent for the Pittsford Central School District. We're going to continue on rolling on with all of these great interviews. And there is just a there's an infinite pool of amazing people around here, and we continue to tap into it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely evening if you're watching this at night, a lovely day if you're watching this in the morning, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much. Have a great one. Take care.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.